They said she was just a cleaning lady, invisible, ordinary, powerless. But that night, when the millionaire's daughter came running, tears streaming down her face, whispering, "Please, help my father. They're killing him." The world turned upside down. A woman who had nothing became the only hope for a man who had everything. And that's where this story begins, where the power of the heart outweighs the weight of money, and faith rises in the face of fear. How many times has life put you before something that felt bigger than you? How many times has destiny tested your courage, waiting to see if you would act? Today, you'll witness the story of a woman who proved that true strength doesn't come from wealth. It comes from the soul. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so you don't miss stories like this one. And tell me in the comments where are you watching from? I want to see how far this story of faith and courage will travel. Sometimes fate places certain people in spaces where the contrast between grandeur and humility is so sharp it almost hurts to look at. When Nina Brown, a serene-hearted cleaning lady, climbed the hill of Beverly Hills for the first time, she realized this wasn't just a house. It was a monument to the abyss between worlds. The mansion of the millionaire Ethan Coleman stood tall like a modern castle, surrounded by high walls, cold windows, and a silence that spoke louder than any words. Inside that palace of luxury and loneliness, Nina moved quietly as if she had learned to disappear in order to exist. Every step was measured, every glance restrained. Invisible to those in power, she saw what no one else saw. Sadness in the details, laughter that never echoed, air heavy with unspoken truths. It was as if the marble's gleam hid stories that no one dared to tell. While polishing silver railings and folding linen sheets, Nina noticed contrasts others ignored. The smiling portraits on the walls seemed to mask emptiness, and the scent of expensive flowers couldn't hide the odor of absence. The gaze of someone who cleans reveals the secrets that wealth tries to conceal. And in that house, the secrets carried the bitter taste of fear. There are homes that overflow with riches yet lack the most precious thing: peace. In that silent palace, luxury sounded like a gilded cage. Ethan Coleman, the millionaire owner of digital empires, lived surrounded by comfort but estranged from humanity. And Nina, the cleaning lady who owned nothing but faith, was the only living soul in a space suffocated by its own brilliance. Then, routine cracked. Lily, the magnate's 9-year-old daughter, appeared with a look that blended innocence and terror. Her small hands trembled and her blue eyes, filled with tears, searched for something she couldn't name. Children see what adults work so hard to hide. And Lily saw in Nina the only light amid all that shadow. The girl approached, hesitant, and with a trembling voice whispered the words that would change everything. "Please help my dad. They're killing him." Those words struck Nina's heart like thunder in a quiet night. What could a child possibly know? What was happening behind those locked doors? Something there ceased to be merely strange. It had become dangerous. The air inside the mansion seemed to shift. Every gesture, every glance from Monica, the millionaire's wife, felt too rehearsed, too cold. Nina sensed there was something between the lines, something money was trying to hide but fear kept exposing. In that blend of luxury and tension, she began to understand that power, when stripped of soul, smells like poison. The cleaning lady's heart raced. She knew she shouldn't meddle in her employer's affairs, but she also knew some calls come from above, and Lily's plea sounded like one of them. As she looked down the glowing corridors of the mansion, she felt that from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. Destiny had spoken, and she couldn't pretend not to hear it. That afternoon, the sun set behind the hills, painting the mansion's windows with gold. Inside, a story began to awaken. Between the millionaire's wealth and the cleaning lady's simplicity, something invisible was stirring, a silent force, about to reveal that not all brightness comes from light. The next day dawned gray, as if the sky itself felt the weight of what was happening inside that house. Nina Brown, the cleaning lady, went about her routine with her usual care, yet something in the air had shifted. The sound of doors closing, the glances between staff, everything carried a secret. The silence in the millionaire Ethan Coleman's mansion had become a language of its own, and she was starting to understand it. Lily, the little heiress, no longer played in the hallways. She sat by the staircase, clutching her worn-out teddy bear, her only true companion. Her eyes carried the sorrow of someone far too young to bear such burdens. From a distance, Nina could see that the sparkle of childhood was gone. There was fear there, the kind that isn't taught but felt deep in the bones. While cleaning the master bedroom, Nina noticed that the millionaire was not well. Lying motionless and pale, Ethan Coleman looked more like a shadow than a man. His wife, Monica, managed everything with surgical precision. Schedules, medications, visitors. Nothing escaped her control. What should have been care felt more like command. And the house, once silent, now felt imprisoned. The other servants whispered in corners. They said the boss was disappearing little by little, that the new Mrs. Coleman kept everyone away. There was something dark behind her smile, something that made even the guards avert their eyes. Nina listened but preferred silence, and until the moment she heard too much. And what she heard could never be forgotten. While gathering linens in the corridor, Monica's cold voice slipped through a half-open door. "Make sure he never speaks again." The words sliced through the air like a knife. The cleaning lady's heart pounded. That tone, calm, deliberate, left no room for doubt. Danger was real. In that instant, luxury lost its shine, the house lost its charm, and truth tore off its disguise. Nina tried to keep working, but her hands trembled. Water spilled from the bucket, and the cloth dragged across the floor as if weighed down by dread. It was a new kind of fear, the kind that pressed against your ribs and stole your breath. Who would believe a cleaning lady over a powerful woman surrounded by lawyers, guards, and millions? The answer was simple. No one. Still, Lily's face wouldn't leave her mind. The girl had trusted her, and trust is sacred. That night, when everyone slept, Nina passed by Lily's room and saw the light still on. The girl was awake, eyes swollen with tears, whispering the same plea. "Please help my dad." This time there was no hesitation. It was a calling. And in that moment, the cleaning lady understood what fate had placed in her hands. She wasn't just an observer in this story. She was the bridge between love and truth. The faith that carried her through simple days would now be tested in dangerous territory. Fear lingered, but purpose spoke louder. And where purpose dwells, fear cannot survive for long. As midnight fell over Beverly Hills, the clock in the great hall ticked toward something greater. Each second sounded like a countdown to destiny. With every beat, Nina's heart grew steadier, more resolute. The story was only beginning, and what she was about to uncover would transform not only the fate of a millionaire, but also of a cleaning lady who dared to believe in the impossible. The sun was beginning to set when Nina Brown, the cleaning lady, entered the master bedroom once again. The air was thick, the light dim, and the silence heavy enough to breathe uneasily. Beside the bed lay the fragile body of the millionaire Ethan Coleman, motionless, bound by tubes and machines that beeped in slow, sorrowful rhythm. The room, perfect in its decor, carried the same kind of beauty that fear does, elegant but cold. She began her routine as always, with careful steps and attentive eyes. Yet that evening something caught her attention. On the bedside table stood a crystal glass gleaming under the amber light of dusk. The water inside seemed untouched, but around the base was a faint trace of white powder. It was a fleeting moment, but enough to make Nina's heart tighten. Her mind raced with doubt. Could it be coincidence? Was this what was slowly killing the millionaire? The cleaning lady remembered what she had overheard before, and now, what she saw made everything terrifyingly real. But fear is a deceptive enemy. It whispers that it's safer not to see, not to know, not to act. And for a second she almost listened. Even so, instinct prevailed. Nina grabbed a clean cloth and, with the care of someone holding her own fate, touched the glass, examining every detail. The crystal reflected her face, a simple yet brave woman, framed by the luxury of a man who had everything. It was a mirror of destiny, the cleaning lady and the millionaire bound by a deadly secret. The sound of the door made her freeze. Monica appeared, wrapped in her signature perfume, her gaze sharp as a blade. Her smile was polished, but her eyes betrayed danger. "Still working, Nina?" she asked, voice sweet and venomous. Nina nodded quietly, hiding the cloth behind her apron. The tension between them hung in the air like static before a storm. Monica approached the glass and brushed her fingers against it, unaware of what Nina had noticed. "Mr. Coleman needs complete rest," she said, looking her up and down. The cleaning lady lowered her eyes, but inside the truth burned hot. She knew that glass told a story no one wanted to hear, and that speaking up could cost her everything. Later that night, alone in her small servant's room, Nina couldn't sleep. The image of the glass haunted her, along with the bitter taste of injustice. Who would believe her? A woman in a simple uniform against the power of a rich, influential wife. And yet something inside her began to shift. Fear was giving way to faith. The next morning, she gathered her courage. She would speak out, tell someone what she'd seen. But destiny moves swiftly when it senses the truth. Before she could act, she was summoned to the mistress's office. There, standing before 2 guards and Monica herself, she heard the accusation that broke her world apart. Theft. The poison of deceit worked faster than any drug. As she was escorted out, she felt a small touch on her hand. It was Lily, the girl, her eyes full of tears, slipping something into the cleaning lady's palm. "It's all here. Save him." It was a USB drive. In that moment, Nina understood. The fight was only beginning. The crystal glass had been the first sign, but the truth, that would have a voice of its own. Night fell over Los Angeles like a veil of mystery as Nina Brown, the cleaning lady, walked through the streets with her heart racing. The USB drive that Lily had slipped into her hand pulsed as if it carried a living secret. The city lights shimmered in her eyes, mixing fear and hope. She didn't know what she would find, but something deep inside told her that this small object held everyone's fate. Nina entered a public library, the only place where she could access a computer without being noticed. The place was silent, broken only by the soft sound of pages turning and keyboards tapping. Her hands trembled as she plugged in the USB drive. For a second, she thought about giving up. But the image of the fragile, helpless millionaire returned to her mind, along with Lily's pleading eyes. She took a deep breath and clicked. The screen lit up with a series of files, documents, contracts, recordings. Nina's eyes scanned the lines as if reading her own destiny. There were forged signatures, illegal transfers, and falsified medical reports. Everything pointed to Monica. Her name appeared over and over, tied to the manipulation of Ethan Coleman's company shares. The woman didn't just want money. She wanted to erase the man who had made her rich. The air in the library grew colder. The cleaning lady, used to facing dust and loneliness, was now facing the power of a dark, calculating mind. Each click took her deeper into a pit of corruption. But among the files, one video made her stop. Surveillance footage from the mansion showed Monica standing beside a doctor, handing over envelopes and whispering instructions. The evidence was undeniable, fear mixed with adrenaline. Nina knew she was in danger, but she also knew there was no turning back. For the first time, she held something greater than fear: the truth. And truth, once discovered, is like fire. It destroys, but it also purifies. Around her, the library seemed to transform into a silent battlefield, where courage whispered louder than terror. Suddenly, the screen flickered. A new window appeared carrying an anonymous message: "Stop now or you'll disappear too." Nina's blood ran cold. She looked around. Everyone seemed ordinary, yet she could feel the danger lurking. The threat was clear, the enemy invisible. She quickly shut down the computer, clutching the USB drive like someone protecting a fragile flame. Outside, the night wind hit her face. Neon lights flickered, their reflections dancing across puddles on the sidewalk. Nina walked fast, glancing over her shoulder at every corner. She knew someone was watching. Each step was a silent prayer for protection. She was no longer just a cleaning lady. She was a witness, a key piece in the war between greed and redemption. In her mind, Lily's face appeared, a reminder of why she couldn't stop. The girl had trusted her, and the pure love of a child is the fuel behind the bravest acts. Nina knew she needed to find help, someone who would believe her story. But who would risk everything for something so impossible to believe? The USB drive, hidden beneath the colorful scarf she wore around her hair, felt heavier with every heartbeat. Time was running out. The secret was alive now, and a new hunt had begun. Power would try to silence her, but faith still whispered that truth always finds its way, even through the darkest streets of a city that never sleeps. Dawn found Nina Brown, the cleaning lady, with tired eyes but a steady heart. After a night spent running from fear, she searched for a place where innocence still had room to breathe. The glitter of Beverly Hills was behind her now, replaced by the narrow, colorful streets of Compton, where life pulsed through laughter, noise, and hardship. It was there, amid concrete and community, that she sought refuge and hope. Inside a small house with peeling paint and the scent of fresh coffee, the world felt more human. Lily, the millionaire's daughter, looked around in awe and curiosity. The floral curtains, the open Bible on the table, the crooked family photos on the wall, everything was different from the cold luxury she'd known. And for the first time in a long while, she smiled. It was a shy smile, but genuine, the kind that comes when you finally feel the ground beneath your feet. Nina made pancakes while an old radio played a soft tune. The simplicity of the moment was almost sacred. Between the smell of the batter and the warmth of the skillet, there was love, the kind you can't buy, only build. Lily sat at the table watching every move as if learning the meaning of home for the very first time. Her innocent laughter filled the little kitchen, replacing silence with the music of life. As they ate, Nina told stories about her childhood, about the days when she too believed in miracles. She spoke gently, though her eyes carried old scars. Lily listened closely, like someone finding shelter after a storm. There was a bond forming between them, one that went deeper than blood, the invisible tie between two souls that had both lost love. And in that connection, both began to heal what the world had broken. But peace, though sweet, is fragile. On the small TV in the corner, the news interrupted their laughter. The screen showed Nina's face, followed by harsh words. Cleaning lady kidnaps billionaire's heiress. Her heart stopped. Once again, injustice wore the mask of lies. Lily looked at her, frightened, but Nina pulled her close, holding her like a shield, a promise that she would protect her no matter the cost. Fear knocked again, but it didn't find the same woman. The cleaning lady who once bowed her head now stood in faith. God knows the truth, she whispered, stroking Lily's hair. In her eyes was the calm of someone who understood that truth can be attacked but never destroyed. Courage was taking shape, and love its purpose. As sunlight poured through the window and danced across the worn floor, Lily began to draw. On the paper, she sketched two figures holding hands in front of a small house. It's us, she said with a smile. Nina smiled too, her heart warming. That simple scene was worth more than all the gold in the world. It was something the millionaire lying in his cold mansion had never truly felt. Home. Outside, their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Lopez, knocked at the door, bringing bread and faith. Her presence was like a hug disguised as conversation. Child, when evil shouts, it's because good is winning, she said, placing the bread on the table. Nina thanked her with tears in her eyes. The world could be cruel, but it still sent angels, often disguised as ordinary people. That night, between prayers and promises, Nina watched Lily sleep and finally understood. Her mission wasn't just to save a rich man, it was to rescue the purity that power had forgotten. And as the city lights flickered in the distance, the cleaning lady, with a hidden USB drive and a sleeping child by her side, felt richer than any millionaire alive. The silence of that dawn was different, not the silence of peace, but of held breath, the kind that knows danger is close. Nina Brown, the cleaning lady, walked down the empty street with Lily in her arms, the USB drive tucked safely inside her apron pocket. Behind them, the faint sound of sirens pierced the air. At every corner, fear whispered, "Stop." But faith answered louder, "Keep going." The city lights blurred with the sweat and tears on her face. It was a war between courage and exhaustion, between the mother she'd lost and the child she now had to protect. The cleaning lady no longer thought of herself, only of shielding what power wanted to destroy. And through it all, the face of the millionaire, pale, still and fading, haunted her mind, reminding her that truth still breathed, even if barely. In a damp alley lit only by a flickering street lamp, Nina saw a familiar figure, Ryan Carter, the millionaire's former assistant. He looked different, thinner, tired, but his eyes still carried that quiet honesty. "Nina," he whispered, disbelief in his voice. She nodded, words caught in her throat. "I know what they're doing to him," she said, showing the USB drive. The glimmer of both fear and hope reflected in Ryan's eyes. They took shelter in an old warehouse where stacks of boxes and the steady rhythm of rain set the scene for an improvised faith. Ryan opened his laptop and the evidence glowed before them, light in the middle of darkness. "This could destroy her," he murmured, referring to Monica. Nina's voice was calm, steady. "Or destroy us." For the first time since the chaos began, she smiled, not from joy, but from courage. As thunder echoed in the distance, Ryan told his story. He'd been fired for questioning Monica's actions, living in hiding ever since, waiting for the right moment to strike back. Life had broken him but not corrupted him. And there, beside a cleaning lady risking everything for a man who'd never truly seen her, he found a faith he thought he'd lost. Lily slept on a makeshift blanket, her worn-out teddy bear pressed to her chest. Nina watched her and prayed silently. "Lord, show me the way." The wind that slipped through the cracks in the walls sounded like an answer, not promising ease but direction. In that moment, faith became their only map, but the enemy prayed too unto darkness. In a luxurious penthouse high above the city, Monica watched the news on her phone. Her smile was thin, venomous. "Find the cleaning lady," she said, glass of red wine in hand. The scene was a study in contrast. On one side, soulless power. On the other, fragile but living faith. And in that invisible balance, money weighed less than purpose. When dawn began to rise, Nina knew time was running out. Ryan, beside her, adjusted the old car that would take them to someone willing to help. Detective Harper. "You trust her?" he asked. Nina answered softly, "I trust what's right." Deep down, she knew real justice doesn't come from courts, but from hearts guided by faith. As the engine sputtered and the first light broke over the horizon, the cleaning lady looked at Lily and thought of how many lives are lost for lack of love, and how many are saved because of it. Fear still followed her, but now faith walked ahead, and in the rearview mirror she saw the city fading behind them, carrying its lies away. The road to truth had begun, and no power on earth could stop it. The silence inside the Coleman mansion had a weight of its own. The walls, once symbols of power and elegance, now echoed with the sins that money had tried to hide. Lily, the millionaire's daughter, was back in the place she called home, but the gold no longer shone. It had become a glass cage. The air was cold and fear smelled like expensive perfume. Monica walked the halls with deliberate grace, her heels clicking like the ticking of an impatient clock. Her red dress shimmered beneath the chandelier light, contrasting with the innocence of the girl locked away in a lavish room. She spoke to Lily as if to an enemy, her tone sweet and poisonous. "Your father needs to rest, darling. And the cleaning lady has already done enough." Outside the gates, the night hid two determined figures, Nina Brown and Ryan Carter. The cleaning lady gazed up at the glowing mansion, her heart pounding like a war drum. Every lit window reminded her of the distance between those who have everything and those who have only faith. But she had learned that faith is the one possession fear can't steal. They slipped in through the back, moving between shadows and memories. The scent of wax and flowers mingled with the sharp taste of tension. Ryan disabled cameras with trembling hands while Nina walked with the precision of someone who knew every corner of the house. After all, she had cleaned it for months, an invisible witness to the truth. In the master bedroom, Monica approached the bed where the millionaire lay. Ethan Coleman breathed weakly, tethered to machines that blinked in soft blue hues. "You've lived long enough," she whispered, her fingers hovering over the control panel. The beauty on her face hid the death in her hands. But before she could act, a firm voice broke the silence. "Step away from him." It was Nina, standing in the doorway, her wrinkled uniform clinging to her, her colorful headscarf damp with sweat and tears. She no longer looked like a cleaning lady. She looked like an angel on a mission. Monica turned, her smile collapsing into hatred. "You should have stayed in your place," she hissed, gripping the controller tighter. The air between them felt alive, stretched thin with tension. Ryan appeared behind her, holding up a camera. "It's all being recorded, Monica." For a heartbeat, power shifted sides. The villain's face went pale, but her rage was faster than her fear. In one wild motion, she shoved a table over. Cables snapped, machines screamed, alarms blared. "Do you really think anyone will believe a cleaning lady and a traitor?" she shouted, pulling a gun from her bag. The gunshot split the silence like judgment itself. Time froze, smoke rising, echoes colliding with screams. Lily cried out, calling for Nina. The cleaning lady, on her knees, turned her gaze to the still-breathing millionaire. "Even wounded," she whispered, "Lord, give me strength." Once again, faith bloomed in the space where fear tried to rule. Chaos flooded the mansion. Guards ran, sirens grew louder. Ryan fought to restrain Monica, who screamed about power, money, and revenge. Amid the noise, Nina crawled toward Lily and held her tightly, her strength fading but her love unbroken. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart," she whispered, not knowing if she'd survive. And in that moment, the mansion, that monument to greed, became something far greater. The stage where love faced corruption and dared to win. The hospital was wrapped in a silence that wasn't the absence of sound, but the presence of uncertainty. The cold lights of the hallway reflected the exhaustion of those waiting for a miracle. The cleaning lady sat on a blue plastic chair, her hands covered in bandages, eyes fixed on the ICU door. Each second was an unspoken prayer, a plea rising from the depths of her soul. Ethan Coleman, the millionaire, fought between life and death. The machines blinked with uneven rhythms, as though technology itself hesitated before divine will. The man who once commanded empires now depended on wires and tubes, and on the love of a woman the world deemed insignificant. It's strange how, in the end, power always bows before simplicity. Lily slept against Nina's shoulder, her worn-out teddy bear clutched tightly in her arms. The little girl who once cried in fear now slept in faith, believing the cleaning lady was strong enough to save her father. The scene looked like a sacred painting, luxury and suffering side by side, joined by a love that outlives despair. Detective Harper watched from afar, silent and thoughtful. At first she had doubted everything, the story, the intentions, even Nina herself. But now she saw something the law doesn't teach: divine justice. The kind of truth that doesn't need to be shouted because it is felt, in the skin, the eyes, the gestures. Sometimes truth doesn't scream, it simply endures. On the bed, the millionaire opened his eyes for the first time since the shooting. The light blinded him, and the rhythmic beeping of the machine seemed to echo from a distant dream. In front of him sat Nina, tears streaming down her face. When he finally spoke, his voice was weak but filled with redemption. "You saved me." It was more than gratitude, and it was a confession of remorse. Nina stepped closer and gently touched his hand. "It wasn't me, it was God," she said softly, her tone carrying the calm of someone who understands that some miracles pass through human hands but are born from something higher. For a moment, the millionaire's eyes filled with tears. Life, after all, measures no wealth in what we own, only in what we give. The dawn began to pour through the hospital window. The first rays of sunlight painted the room in golden hues, as if heaven itself had reached down to touch the earth. Lily woke up, and when she saw her father alive, she ran into his arms. The embrace of the three seemed to dissolve the weight of the world. Outside, journalists gathered, cameras, flashes, and frantic voices, all trying to capture a miracle that couldn't be contained in headlines. To many, she was still just the cleaning lady who stepped beyond her place. But in that moment, Nina knew her worth no longer came from what people said, but from what God had written for her. As the hospital came alive with the morning rush, Nina looked out the window. The city was the same, cars, buildings, and hurry. But something inside her had changed forever. The woman who once scrubbed the corners of a mansion was now healing the corners of a soul. And without realizing it, the world had begun to see what heaven already knew. Faith is the true fortune of those who stand tall, even when everything tries to bring them down. The days that followed were marked by a different kind of silence, not the silence of pain, but of healing. In the hospital, every heartbeat of the millionaire seemed to rewrite the time that pride had stolen. Ethan Coleman, once a symbol of power and detachment, now looked at the world with the vulnerability of someone reborn. The cleaning lady, seated beside his bed, no longer saw a boss. She saw a man who had finally discovered the worth of being human. The sunlight filtered through the white curtains, spreading a soft glow across the room. Lily was drawing in her notebook, her light laughter filling the air with hope. The girl seemed to understand what many adults forget, that love is the only language that heals all wounds. With every shared glance between father and daughter, Nina felt her heart warm, as if the pain of the past days were slowly being washed away by grace. Ethan, still weak, called her name. His voice, once firm and commanding, was now calm and humble. "I owe you everything, Nina. Not just my life, but the chance to be a better man." The cleaning lady lowered her eyes, her smile gentle and full of quiet faith. "You owe nothing to me, only gratitude to God." I just did what anyone would do if they still believed in good." He took a deep breath and continued. "But no one would have believed it. Not even me." His words came slowly, as if confessing to his own soul. "I lived surrounded by luxury, but I died inside long before this bed, and you made me see what truly matters." In that instant, silence became something sacred. The truth, when spoken with remorse, is the purest sound the heart can hear. Detective Harper entered the room, her presence bringing calm authority. She carried good news. Monica had been spotted in another state and would soon be captured. Nina gave a quiet nod of gratitude, her eyes free of hate. Only peace. Forgiveness, after all, is the burden that sets you free. Harper smiled, admiring the woman who had done so much with so little. The world calls it luck. God calls it purpose. Outside, the press waited impatiently. Reporters, cameras, microphones, all eager to see the woman the country now called a hero. But Nina didn't see herself that way. To her, heroes are those who keep loving even when the world tells them it's useless. While many saw a cleaning lady who saved a millionaire, she saw only one soul helping another to rise. Lily ran to her and hugged her tightly, the embrace of a child who had found a mother. "Please don't leave," she whispered, her voice trembling like a prayer. Nina, deeply moved, stroked her hair and replied softly, "Now that your father's better, you don't need me anymore." But Ethan interrupted, his tone no longer one of command but of affection. "Yes, we do. Both of us." In that moment something broke, not painfully but beautifully. Guilt gave way to acceptance. Loneliness turned into family, and somehow life began to rebuild what seemed lost. Nina looked at them and felt for the first time that she belonged, not just to a place but to a purpose. Outside the hospital, a black car pulled up quietly. The window rolled down, revealing Monica's face, dark sunglasses hiding her eyes, her expression sharp with restrained fury. The wind tugged at her perfectly styled hair, but her gaze betrayed her despair. The peace of some is always the nightmare of others. And while the sun illuminated redemption inside the hospital, the shadow of vengeance waited outside, a reminder that forgiveness, though divine, is always tested by darkness. Night fell over the Coleman mansion like a warning. The wind howled through the trees, dragging their shadows across the marble floor. Inside, the silence felt like waiting, the kind of stillness that only comes before tragedy. The cleaning lady, her wounds healed but her heart still scarred, walked down the hall with Lily holding her hand. It was the first time Nina had returned to that place since the chaos. She thought she was there to close a chapter, but destiny had other plans. In the grand living room, the millionaire stared at the family portrait on the wall. The glow of the fireplace flickered in Ethan Coleman's tired eyes. The flames danced before him, mocking everything money could never buy: peace, forgiveness, love. Beside him, Nina stood silently, understanding without words. The air felt like a farewell, but also like a beginning. "Some things must burn for life to bloom again," she whispered, her voice calm, almost prophetic. Outside, the screech of tires shattered the night. Monica had returned. Her black car slid down the driveway like a predator in the dark. She stepped out in red, the same color as before, the color of lust, power, and wrath. But now it looked darker, almost funereal. In her eyes there was no control left, only the fury of someone who had lost everything. When she entered the mansion gates, the air itself seemed to change, heavier, venomous, ready to ignite. "Ethan," she shouted, her voice echoing through the halls, bouncing off cold marble and old guilt. "You destroyed me." Her rage was not born of love but of obsession. Nina placed Lily behind her and stepped forward to shield the millionaire. "It's over, Monica," she said firmly, her voice steady as stone. But Monica laughed, a sharp, hollow laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Nothing ends until I say it does." She hurled her wine glass at the wall, crimson liquid splattering like blood. In one desperate motion, she grabbed a burning log from the fireplace and flung it toward the curtains. The flames leapt instantly, alive, hungry, unstoppable. The fire spread across the room as if it had been waiting for this moment. Paintings burned, chandeliers melted. Marble floors reflected the inferno above. The mansion of power was turning into an altar of purification. Nina rushed to protect Lily as Ethan struggled to rise. The air grew thick, hot, suffocating. Curtains collapsed in burning sheets. In the chaos, Monica screamed, her words twisted, her mind breaking. "It was all mine," she cried, surrounded by the fire that mirrored her own destruction. The cleaning lady coughed, holding Lily tightly. "Keep your head down, sweetheart. We're almost there." Through the smoke, Nina saw the millionaire stumble and fall. Without a second thought, she turned back for him even as the flames crawled up the walls. Ryan's voice echoed from outside, shouting her name, but she didn't hear. Something greater than fear pulled her forward. She reached Ethan, still conscious, his face streaked with ash. "Leave me," he whispered weakly. "No," she answered, her tone unshakable. "God didn't bring me this far to give up now." The ceiling groaned, beams cracking, fire roaring like a living beast. Time seemed to hold its breath. Nina threw herself over Ethan and Lily, shielding them with her body as part of the roof collapsed. A blinding flash. Light, sound, and faith became one. Outside fire trucks arrived, sirens wailing, red and blue lights slicing through the smoke. Ryan knelt on the lawn, screaming their names, his face streaked with tears and soot. When the firefighters finally broke through the doors, the scene was haunting, like the aftermath of a divine trial. Amid the ruins, Nina lay motionless, still holding Lily in her arms. Her face was calm, almost serene, as if she had simply fallen asleep in peace. The millionaire, injured but alive, reached out, his hand trembling as he touched hers. "She saved me. Again," he whispered. The fire burned until dawn, but that night it wasn't the house that was consumed, and it was the past. The mansion became ashes, but from those ashes something new was born. Faith that would not bend, love that would not break, courage that would not fade. And as the sun rose, painting the smoke in gold, the world began to understand what Nina had always known. Sometimes, you must lose everything to finally learn what it means to be truly rich. Dawn rose slowly, as if even the sun hesitated to shine upon what was left of the mansion. Among the ashes, smoke drifted upward like silent prayers. The entire city watched the place that just the night before had been consumed by tragedy. But inside the hospital, far from the noise, far from the cameras, the real miracle was unfolding. Not the kind you read in headlines, but the kind that breathes quietly back into the world. The cleaning lady lay in a simple hospital room, bathed in a golden beam of light. Her eyes fluttered open for the first time in days. Her heartbeat was faint but steady. The rhythm of the machines beside her sounded like a hymn, every beep a note of hope. When the nurse realized she was awake, she ran down the hall shouting, "She's alive!" The hospital came alive with whispers, smiles, and tears. Moments later, the door opened. Lily entered first, clutching her worn teddy bear. Behind her walked the millionaire, his arm still in a sling, his eyes glistening. When Ethan Coleman met Nina's gaze, the world seemed to pause. There was no longer employer and employee, wealth and servitude, only two souls who had walked through fire together. He approached her bed, knelt down, and took her hand. "You saved me, Nina," he said softly. "But what you really saved was my soul." Lily ran to the cleaning lady and threw her arms around her, crying and laughing at once.
"Mommy Nina,"
she shouted, her voice full of innocent joy. Nina embraced her tightly, closing her eyes, and in that moment she felt the embrace of the daughter she had lost years before. It was as if God had returned her love in another form in another time, but with the same heart. The press found out quickly. Reporters and cameras gathered outside the hospital, their lights flashing against the glass. "The miracle cleaning lady," read the headlines. "The woman who defied the flames and saved a billionaire." But Nina, as humble as ever, refused interviews. "It wasn't my miracle," she said gently. "It was God's." Still, the world began to call her the angel who rose from fire. Days later, Ethan announced the creation of the Nina Brown Foundation, dedicated to helping working mothers and women in need. On stage before journalists and executives, the millionaire spoke with tears in his eyes. "She showed me that true worth isn't in what we own, but in who we are when everything is taken from us." The audience rose in applause, and Nina simply smiled, the quiet smile of someone who had seen heaven up close. Ryan, the man who had believed in her when no one else did, was there too. As the crowd dispersed, he approached and said softly, "You're proof that good always wins, even when the world doubts it." Nina looked upward, her smile serene. "It wasn't me, it was him." A gentle wind blew, lifting the edge of her colorful scarf, a divine whisper of grace. Weeks passed and life blossomed anew. Lily ran through the hallways of their new home. Not a mansion, but a place filled with laughter, the smell of coffee, and morning prayers. Ethan visited the foundation daily, trading his gray suits for simple clothes. And Nina, once invisible to the world, now walked with the lightness of someone who had discovered that love is the truest form of wealth. But peace has a way of testing itself. One afternoon, a plain white envelope was found at the doorstep. No return address. Inside, a single letter written by hand. The handwriting was sharp and familiar. "It's not over," signed Monica. The wind outside howled, making the curtains sway like restless ghosts. The story seemed ready to close, but fate once again had other plans. The days that followed felt like whispers between heaven and earth. The ashes of the Coleman mansion still darkened the horizon, but in the hearts of the faithful something new was blooming. The world watched the story of the cleaning lady who had defied the impossible, and the millionaire who had learned, too late, the true meaning of life. Every headline seemed to echo the same miracle. The faith of one humble woman had defeated evil with a force even fire couldn't destroy. One cold morning, the wail of sirens cut through the silence. Police surrounded a small private airfield. Inside a silver jet, Monica Coleman was preparing to flee the country. Her face was still flawless, but her eyes were empty, the living portrait of what remains when pride devours the soul. Surrounded, she kept her usual mask, the false smile, the arrogant tone, the expensive perfume. But for the first time, power did not answer her call. When the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, the gray sky seemed to sigh. Justice had finally found its way. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Nina was preparing for a press conference. She didn't want fame or applause, but she had accepted Ethan's invitation for one reason: to speak about faith, about what truly moves the world. The hall was packed, and cameras, journalists, onlookers. When the cleaning lady entered, wearing a simple dress and her colorful headscarf, everyone stood up. It wasn't for vanity, it was for reverence. The millionaire stepped onto the stage first. His voice trembled, yet it carried weight. "I lived surrounded by gold," he began, "and forgot the worth of the hands that cleaned the floors beneath me. And one of those hands saved my life and my soul." The crowd fell silent. He turned to Nina, his eyes glassy with tears. "This woman taught me that true wealth lies not in what you possess, but in what you give." Nina took a deep breath before approaching the microphone. Her voice was soft, but her words carried the strength of a lifetime of faith. "I'm not a hero," she said. "I'm just a woman who believed that good still wins, even when it seems impossible. I only did what I felt God asked of me." Flashbulbs exploded, but she didn't flinch. Her gaze lifted upward, not to the crowd, but to the heavens. Outside, crowds cheered and wept. People held signs that read, "Nina Brown, our hope and faith is stronger than fear." In the middle of the crowd, an elderly woman prayed through tears, Mrs. Lopez, the cleaning lady's neighbor and confidant. "I knew God had a plan for her," she whispered, clutching her rosary. Weeks later, Monica stood trial. The courtroom was full. The press watched every move. When the judge read the sentence, 20 years in prison, silence fell. Monica, once proud and commanding, looked around but found no one left to defend her. Nina was present, sitting quietly in the back. She didn't smile, didn't celebrate. She simply closed her eyes and prayed. Forgiveness, after all, was her truest victory. Then came a scene that felt almost dreamlike. The Nina Brown Foundation was complete. A modest building filled with sunlight, laughter, and the hum of new beginnings. Women and children filled the halls, their smiles painting the air with hope. Lily hung colorful drawings on the walls while Ethan, the millionaire, shook hands and laughed with workers, his gray suit replaced by simple clothes. Watching from a distance, Nina felt something profound, as if the world had finally balanced itself again. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, painting the sky in gold and amber, Nina stood on the foundation's terrace. Her colorful scarf danced softly in the wind. From afar, Lily's voice called out to her, bright and sweet, and Nina smiled. The past had burned away, but love had survived. And there, in the sacred silence of twilight, she finally understood. The true miracle was never surviving the fire. It was remaining pure amid the ashes. In the end, it wasn't money, status, or power that saved the man who once had everything. It was the quiet faith of a woman the world refused to see. The cleaning lady proved that the true millionaire is the one who keeps a pure heart even when surrounded by ashes. And you? How many times have you felt too small to change what's wrong? Maybe your courage is only asleep, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Life always gives us signs, and when fear shouts loudest, remember Nina. She chose to act when everyone else stayed silent. Now it's your turn to do something extraordinary. Maybe not in front of cameras or under bright lights, but where it truly matters, within yourself. The world needs more people who love with faith, who fight with soul, and who turn pain into purpose. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that light still exists even in the darkest nights, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. Here, you'll keep learning, keep growing, and discover that true wealth is living with courage, faith, and a clean heart.